I'm John Kaiser in Vancouver at the Metals Investor Forum, September 28th, 2018, talking to George Putnam, CEO of Scandium International Mining Corp. George, welcome to Vancouver.
Hi, John. Good to see you.
George, in your presentation earlier today, you made a comment which I thought was very interesting, namely that the adoption of advanced materials by end users is a lot more rapid than it has historically been. And you mentioned carbon fiber as one example of a new material. Can you elaborate on this and how this impacts scandium as a part of advanced new materials such as aluminum scandium-based alloys?
Sure. Basically, there's only been one new aluminum alloy created. Essentially, that's the aluminum lithium alloy since the mid-1940s. Everything else in the aluminum space we've generally had for that long. So the aluminum hasn't, the recipes haven't changed all that much. They've been refined, they've been improved, processes have been improved, but the pace of change has slowed, with the exception of the aluminum lithium alloy, which is really quite special. But when you think about what else is the pace of change in other materials, we didn't have carbon fiber in commercial products or in any widespread use for more than 10 to 20 years now. And there was great questions whether it would ever be affordable or usable. Magnesium as an alloy has struggled to make inroads with aluminum, even though it's lighter and it can be very much more versatile in some ways. Its cost and its other detriments to it have always held it back. What's happening now, my sense, my vision on this, what's happening now is that in the last 10 to 20 years, we have had an enormous revolution in terms of improvement in products and parts and performance. And engineers are now more than ever straining against the limitations of the materials that they have to use. So they're calling for better materials, they're wanting better materials, and they're more prepared to use them when they're presented with those alternatives. I think aluminum scandium alloys fit perfectly into that discussion.
Now, 9 months ago, you started producing a series of announcements about letters of intents with various end users to whom you were supplying a master aluminum scandium alloy, or perhaps even a somewhat lower grade version for them to experiment with. Now, given that what scandium aluminum alloy already does for aluminum is well known, possibly since the 60s, and it's been largely a question of, well, when is there going to be reliable, primary, scalable supply at a stable price? What is it that these various parties are doing with their samples that is needed to trigger a decision? Yes, we can use this material. Can you put us down for so and so much for delivery when you're in production?
Sure. How do these LOIs translate into offtake agreements? Well, for a potential customer to buy a block of master alloy from us, they have to be pretty convinced that they want to pay the freight for that, and that they're going to get the benefits on the shop floor, in the construction of the part. It's different for different LOIs and different consumers. And the easiest example to give you is in the casting space. So the casting guys are all basically chefs with their own recipes, or following a standard recipe with a few little tweaks here and there of their own spices to correspond to issues they have in terms of hot cracking or strength or heat tolerance based on the parts they're making. Now, they actually make parts for a customer. They make a run of 5,000 or 10,000 parts where they mix their own metal, pour it into molds, break the molds free, clean up the parts, and ship them off to somebody. That is a perfect testing ground for scandium because they're literally mixing their own batches of alloys. And if they had a little scandium in form of master alloy on the floor, they could chop some of that off, put it in, and test it and see whether they get material improvements in properties. And in fact, the literature says they will, and they are, and it depends on which alloy recipe they're using as to which benefits they're hunting. So that's the proof. That's the proof of the pudding. And you're not going to see customers step forward until they've actually tried this on their shop floor. They know the full economics. They know the response scandium gives to the performance of the product or the application that they're using. That's what the LOIs are destined to do, is satisfy in the potential customer's mind that this is a good economic proposition for him.
You mentioned that the team is people from Bechtel, from BHP, people who know mining, who know process development, and that you have a high degree of confidence that the flow sheet will work as planned at the cost, and you'll be able to deliver the product profitably at the price you have told these end users to accept. And yet every chemical plant comes with potential risks, and no end user would really consider committing to aluminum scandium alloy until they are sure that it actually works. What portion of their product line that they wish to incorporate aluminum scandium into are they likely to commit to or risk exposing aluminum scandium supply to?
Not all of it, only a portion of it. But you have to look at two things with regard to our project, which mitigate these concerns to some significant extent. First of all, in the lateritic clay, in the world of separating valuable metals from lateritic clays, the nickel cobalt projects are $1 to $3 billion projects. They're complex projects, and they have a long storied history of not coming on stream, on time, on budget, and producing to full capacity in the first couple of years of their life. The more recent examples of this, after 20 years, a lot of the mistakes haven't been repeated. They have had a much better performance recently than they did at the start of that process. Contrast that with us. Ningin Scandium project, 240 tons a day. This is a pilot plant. This is a pilot scale facility in the context of lateritic metals recovery from lateritic clays. So it is much easier to be nimble addressing issues as they come up and dealing with them and not getting hugely hit up by processing issues. That's the first point. The second point is, of course, we have a ramp of our own production where we have actually used the experience, conservatively used the experience of the larger nickel cobalt projects to define the ramp of our production. We only make about 35% of our nameplate capacity in the first 12 months. That goes to a little over 60% in the second 12 months of production. And in month 25, we hit nameplate capacity of 38 tons. So we want to ramp up our customers just as in the same way that they want to be careful to ramp up the portion of their product that they're committing to scandium content as well.
So you have announced 7 independent groups for letters of intents, and one can imagine anywhere from 1 to 3 tons, maybe more, coming as an offtake agreement that risks only a portion of their product line. And from talking, it looks like you may be in negotiations or even have undisclosed experiments of this sort going on with maybe a couple dozen companies, and that could be anywhere from if they all just want 1 ton, from 24 to 50 tons of material. At what point do you hit the switch in terms of deciding to raise the CapEx financing in terms of disclosed small, batch type offtake agreements?
We want a clear and definitive show of support for purchases of our product from the marketplace before we go and finance the project. We want that. We know that will influence the cost of the funding that we need to raise to build the project. We feel like we need to do our work first, and the financing comes later. The financing comes when we've demonstrated a market for this product. Will we take a financial investment decision? Will we take FID when we're at 70% sales through offtakes instead of 100%? That's a nice problem to have. That's a nice question to have. That'll get debated at the board level. From my perspective, I think that as the offtakes begin to materialize, they will come quicker towards the end than they do at the beginning. That the people who are contemplating buying some material from us will move more quickly when they see us basically stocking out in that first 3-year period. So again, I mean, this is kind of a it's not so much a hypothetical question as it is sort of a nice problem to have, and we'll see as we go. I think it depends also on the specific off-takers involved. If we had a big one for a big chunk, we might be willing to get a running start on the financing and the project before we were finished.
So in other words, if you have an offtake with a party that's recognizable by the market, and given that they now understand the potential of the aluminum scandium alloy space, things are going to happen really quickly.
This project is shovel ready. We're ready to do it. We're in first position, and we want to stay in first position. So yeah, moving quickly is very much our desire. We just need to get our work done. We need to get our boxes checked before we take that next step.
All right. I've been talking to George Putnam of Scandium International Mining Corp.